Okay, well, I don't know where everybody is today. Looks a little thin.
Yes.
Time for you two to behave. Okay, so today what we'll do was chapter 2. I haven't even looked to see. Hopefully you've all been able to turn that in. Chapter 2 in PowerPoint. PowerPoint's pretty straightforward. Anybody have some issues with chapter 2? Yeah, like what?
Just some of the instructions last night.
So it's more the instructions than it was.
Yeah, the actual, once I get through the book again, so to read it.
You know, and I apologize, that's the way the instructions. I think chapter 3 is due on Thursday, and that'll be your last homework. Last homework. And on Tuesday, which is what, the 4th, 7th, I believe, is your final. And your final will include Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And what it'll be is each one will feed off of the next one. I'm pretty sure I had you starting in I put it together over the weekend. Pretty sure I have you starting in an Excel spreadsheet. You then take some of that data, embed it into a Word document, finish the Word document, then you take data from both of those and you build a PowerPoint presentation. In other words, so it's cumulative. At the end, you have 3 documents that you upload for your final exam. It will be in here, and it will be, you'll have up to the hour and 50 minutes to do it. I don't think it should take you, but an hour. But you'll have an hour and 50 minutes. If for some reason you're still going after that, we'll give you some, Tylenol to take care of the headache that you obviously, given yourself, and then we'll move on from there. People that have taken the test so far, everybody who followed the directions. My directions, I hope you've noticed, are nowhere near like taking the going through the homeworks, because I don't have you go forward, back, forward, back. It's like doing a dance, and you just hope you didn't miss a step, because if you do, then you're going to end up someplace totally different than where it wants you to. Oh, I missed to undo the bold formatting. And so all of a sudden you get to the end and it's like twice. And you don't know what it's supposed to look like. You won't know what these are supposed to look like, but at least I don't have you, okay, now apply the following theme, undo that theme, do a different theme, now change the color of that theme, now unchange the color of that theme. I get it. I know that's a little bit frustrating. All right, everybody's dragging in late here. I know. I was being facetious. Now, facetious.
No, I've heard it before. It's just I've never heard it used outside of my father's.
Oh, sorry. They say that the average, everybody know what the average vocabulary use of most U.S. adults is?
Besides repair, 400.
Yeah, 400 to 500 words. Means you make your way through your, most of your days with only 400 or 500 words. Hi, how are you? I'm doing fine, thank you. What's on television for tonight? I don't know. What's for supper? Yeah, that's not a lot of words. Anybody know how many Shakespeare had in his vocabulary that he used? Oh, 30,000 words. And that's why Shakespeare wrote, and it's still 450 years after he died, people are still reading his book. Now, mind you, you may not be, but, it's still a common thing to be read, because he was a master of the English language. I read a few things about him, by people that study this stuff, not me. and where he would, as much as possible, never use vulgarities that were common in his day. He would use a combination of lots of other words to insult you even worse. So instead of, calling you a shithead or something, he would find lots of wonderful ways to say the exact same thing using much better words. So kind of cool. I don't even know how I got sidetracked on this. But what I want to do today, and it has nothing to do with PowerPoint, I think you're going to be able to make it through the last PowerPoint without me interfacing with you too much. I've been working on a spreadsheet, or a series of spreadsheets that I thought I'd share with you, give you a real world example of where you could use lots and lots of formulas. Formulas are our friend. What I have is I run because I literally have one of these on Saturday, so I've been spending some time updating my formulas, and I run robot track meets. So kids build robots and they bring them to a track meet, just like you would want to go to a track meet. Who's got the fastest robot? Who's got the robot that can climb the steepest slope? These are little Lego robots. Anybody ever see the Lego robot kits? The robots.
Yeah.
Big.
You use techniques for them, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Technically, Lego techniques.
Yeah.
And I've been using them for almost 20 years now to teach kids how to do programming and engineering, because you kind of have to do both. So, good examples. If you took a Lego surface, cranked it up, and put a robot on it that could drive up just on that surface, what do you suppose the record is for how steep a Lego robot has climbed that?
I want to say about a 55-degree grade.
55-degree grade would be something like this. So the world record is 82.5 degrees. Think about that. That's almost vertical.
It wasn't using wheels, though. It was using tracks.
It was using treads, and it had a glorious design because it can only be a certain length. And so they had 2 sets of treads, which brought it to the maximum length it was allowed to have. And what it had was it had a 3rd set of treads on a universal joint. So it was being driven. And if this thing could move forward about 6 inches, those just naturally fell by gravity and landed on the surface and allowed you a much longer wheelbase. So you have your weight up here. And the whole idea is that the weight has to be over, in front of the center of gravity, because if it's behind the center of gravity, it'd fall over and go boom. And these things have to climb up about 30 inches. So it's not like they just go up a few inches. So it might fail a couple of times trying to get up those first, certain distance. But although there's a little back wall here, and if you think about it, it's actually trying to climb up the back or down the back wall because the treads are moving. It was a beautiful design. It was a lot of years ago, and so they currently hold the record for that. They have, build a bridge that, has to span about 25 inches. That's about that. And it has to be made out of Legos. And we put weight on the middle of it. We use metal barbell weights. And it's a combination of engineering and strength, because the competition only goes to 80 pounds. And whoever either reaches the highest weight up to 80 pounds, because if you're the only one that makes it to 70 pounds, then you win. But if more than one makes it to 80 pounds, then whoever has the lightest bridge wins. And the record is to hold 80 pounds is about 850 grams. So a pound and a half, something like that. Close to 2 pounds. So that's a bridge that weighs a pound and a half to 2 pounds. It can hold 80 pounds of weight. Not bad over a 25 degree. We've had plenty of, and then we always say, do you want us to keep putting more weight on it? And you know what? They have universally said, I've been doing that particular competition for 14 years, they have never said no. So we keep piling on weights. We have about 200 pounds of weights. And sometimes they can hold all 200 pounds, in which case there is no big kaboom. They love it when there's a big kaboom. We have to have people sitting back behind barricades because when you have 200 pounds of weight smashing the Lego bridge, things go flying. Anyway, so here we got these track meets. We have a list of teams. We have a list of who's in the teams, and we have 10 events that they can go into. Now, we want this scorekeeping to be as clean as possible. And so we try to do as much of it through a built-in set of formulas as possible. And the way we do this, and there's a couple of outcomes that we want. So this page right here is the award list. So we want to know at the end of the day who won what. And none of this is manually carried over. This is where the formulas will come in. But so we want to know who gets first and second because we award trophies for all of these. And it will automatically fill in. I've got a couple of dummy things in here. So for the slow climber, Island Lego Robotics held or went up 30 degrees and did it in this, I gotta fix it because it shouldn't say weight and time, it should say slope and time. What if I've got it coming from the wrong place? Slope. No, it should be the right thing. Anyway, like I said, I'm fixing a couple of things. Isn't it nice when you're telling people that you've made mistakes? This is where it pulls all of the cumulative data in from all the 10 different event sheets. And it will automatically, here's a list of all the teams, and it will decide whether or not they've been listed as first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth. I'll make this bigger, but then everybody else gets bigger too. View. So you can see, and the reason why we go 1 through 6 is actually very similar to what you get at a physical track meet that you run at a school, because they give you different points based on your ranking. And if you went and looked at the National Track Meet Association, not the robots, then you get 10 points for a first place, 8 for a second, 6 for a third, 4th for, and down the line. And over here, these are going to pull out, like this team right here, Digital Claw 1, has 1 second place. That's worth 8 points. So their total points is 8, but that's only good enough at the moment to put them in 4th place. The team with the first place has got 1 first place, 2 first places, so that adds up to 2 first places right here, which gives them 20 points. That puts them in first place. So where does all this stuff come from? Well, let's pick one that so nobody's done fastest robot. So I'm going to go to the fastest robots. This is the score sheet where a scorekeeper actually will enter down. And so they get the little slip back from the people running the event. Just a little bigger. So it has a drop-down menu for what teams to pick from, and that comes from this list of teams right here. So you can't even miss, because if you misspell teams and then you try to do formulas that accumulate data, well, it doesn't know the difference between Digital Claw 1 and Digital Claw 1 if you spell out O and E versus the number 1. It sees that as 2 completely different records. So it pulls this out. I'm sorry, where was it? Fastest. So here we go. This is data validation, and we get that because I highlighted that range that I need to pull that information in, and I went up to data validation right there. And it's pulling that list of information from teams in the range B2 to B1000. Now, that's just overkill because there will never be 1,000 teams in the event. It rejects input, so you cannot put in Bob's your uncle team. You've got to take something off of that list. And it will show you the drop-down list. So if I just pick somebody, we'll go with the Hawkbots. Why not? I could put in, Bob and Sally. And then they're going to run their robot 3 times to see how fast they can travel the 18 feet of this event. So maybe they do it in 7.555 seconds. And notice that automatically over here, we've got a formula, which good luck seeing it, but it asks first if there's anything over in B7, this one right here, then it's going to, if there's nothing there, it gives you a blank cell. Otherwise, you're going to get a whole bunch of, NAs, not, the formula returned nothing. And then it's going to ask you to find the minimum value of these 3 cells here. And it does that because you can have, if somebody gets it incomplete like this, you don't want that to mess things up, because incomplete doesn't work very well in mathematical formulas. So we can put it incomplete because this formula right here is looking for incompletes. If I put a 999, it treats it the same way. Those are the 2 ways the scorekeeper can say they failed. The robot died, it went shooting off sideways and never crossed the finish line. There's a lot of things that happen. Wheels fall off halfway to the finish line. It's fun to watch. By the way, if you want to, in Brewer, this Saturday at the Brewer High School, this is where we're holding it, feel free to come down and check us out. Starts at around 9:30. Yes, Noah, can we help you?
No, I'm just looking.
And, hey, if you want to volunteer, you can volunteer. But, it's a fun thing to come watch. The events start around 10 o'clock, opening ceremony at 9:30, and it goes till probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So are these high schoolers that are doing?
No, these are 3rd through 8th graders. Yep. So just imagine a 3rd grader could build a robot that could climb 82 and a half degrees. They might have been a 7th or 8th grader. And the world record for the fastest robot to go 18 feet is 2.114 seconds. So, for something that's this big, it crosses, 18 feet, and it has to stay true because it has to pass through pylons that are 4 feet away. We have to use a laser timer it triggers when it crosses the start line and then triggers when it crosses the finish line. Otherwise, we have to be able to report the time in thousandths of a second, because there are often times when 2 robots will come in at, 3.25 seconds, and it comes down to the thousandths. Fun, right?
How far before the start line do they start?
They have a 1-foot block that they can start inside. And a lot of these robots are about 6 inches. And the stupid thing is, and I don't say anything because it's not my job for strategy, if you want your robot to be going faster when it crosses the start line, you should start it at the back line.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
But
That's why I asked.
guess how often that's done?
Never. No.
Yeah, they almost without a variance put their robot as close to the start line as they possibly can. And it's like, I just want to go, stop it.
Yeah.
You're going to get a little bit more speed.
That's why I asked anyway. I said that same thing.
I ran track. I was a sprinter in middle school and high school. And everybody has to start from a standstill at the start line, which is totally different than the way you sprint in a bike race. Bike races are usually timed from the time you start, when you cross the start line, to when you cross the finish line. But you don't start from 0 speed. you're already, you're warmed up, and here comes the fit start line, and you rev it up, and you try to hit that start line going as fast as you can, and then you have to keep it up until you hit the finish line. And that depends on, I just did a sprint on Friday that was 450 meters, so it took 35 seconds at all out. That's a hard sprint. I always had a lot of respect for the 440ers, the ones who did a full quarter-mile lap on the track at all-out speeds, because I was a 100-yarder. That was it. Boom. Get it over with. Let me die over here on the side. Thank you very much. But anyway, so what we've done is what you see here in the gray and the white, there are no formulas here. The formulas start here, and it's simply find the best of 3. It would be really easy if you said equals min, right, the minimum of D7, E7, F7. That's the basic formula there. But now you want to make sure it doesn't interpret empty spaces as zeros, right? Because if you're looking for the lowest value, you don't want an empty space to be interpreted as a 0. Now, you also need to be able to put something in there that says they failed on that trial, like an incomplete, or we use 999, just because it's off the end. And so if any of those do, it doesn't actually take it into account. So I can put incomplete here. If I put other things like Bob, it doesn't really care, it doesn't matter. If I put a 0 here, it doesn't. Now see what happened? Now the best of 3 is a 0. So we just can't do that. Or I can put 9 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever. If they broke the gold standard, and these things are actually linked to a records page. So there's another page that says this is the highest, or this is what you need to get what we call a gold standard award, which is a real ribbon. It's a 2-color ribbon. They're nice, they're cute. I've always been one to say, please don't give people the kind that you pull off a roll cut with pinking shears. Any of you ever get those in school? They cost about a dime, 5 cents, 10 cents. And they just say, oh, track me, choo, track me, choo, track me, choo. And there's nothing special about them. And then half the time somebody takes a Sharpie and writes fastest, or, long jump, and it looks like crap. So we also have the world record. So currently the fastest world record. If I put in another team here, go pick, I don't know, somebody else, and go over here and put in, wow, these folks did it in 2.01 seconds. And you'll notice it automatically compares the best time to the world record, and if it beats the world record, then they get a yes. If this first team, the Hawkbots, had managed to come in at 3.4 seconds, you'll notice that beats the gold standard of 3.5 seconds, so it gives them a yes. And now if we pop back over to the master, under the fastest robot, here you have the Island Lego Robotics with the first place and the Hawkbots with the second place. And I mean, there's a lot of formulas here. We'll shift it, zoom it in a little bit. Oh, don't you love it? It didn't really make the. So if I went to first place in the slope climber, what it's doing is it's looking for what is on the slope page in a particular cell reference. And that's because if I go to slope, that's the problem with having a switch between resolutions. So way over here on the side, this thing automatically generates our first, second, third. This is where we're pulling that information from. This information is based on the ranking that is automatically generated by comparing, the best times and the best whatevers. I'm not dying. Other ones, I'm just trying to think of. Here's bridge. You know, if we go into bridge, I'm not putting team members in. I've always wanted to have that be something it would pop up a dialog box, look at all the team members registered for that team, and you could go click, 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 and it would automatically bring it in. Because think about a regular track meet. If you're doing the sprint and you win the sprint, you're the only one who wins it. Single person winning. But on the other hand, if you ran a relay, there's 4 people usually in a relay. And you'd all have to be recognized and get your medals or whatever else that you might win. Points for your team. And so right now we just have people manually write that in. But someday I'm going to figure out how to do a pop-up page that allows me to select from a smaller list and have it concatenate those names into there so that I had, if I click here for the mega builders, it gives me a pop-up list of everybody from the mega builders, and I can click Tom and Bob and Sally and, Sue. And that would automatically concatenate those 4 names and put it into that cell. I'll bet you can do it. I just haven't figured out how, and I haven't spent any time trying to figure it out. Who's your friend? Google, that's right, and? YouTube. And what?
Reddit.
Reddit, yeah, sure. And I mean, there are websites out there that are specific for Excel, that are specific for sheets, where people have got blogs and, they're like Reddit, they're places you go and ask questions. And, it's nice if you do a search first for the simple stuff. I hate it when I know exactly what I want to ask and I know it's not a simple question. I want to ask blah, and I know somebody's answered it. But when you ask it, what pops up is 3,000 simple answers to something that I've known how to do for years. And how do you sort through that to find the person who actually knows what I'm talking about? Good example. Maybe I want to so I want to have a formula here that references 1 as part of the, the formula. Now you know that you can write, if I just write equals B5, this is a reference, right? It's a cellular reference, and it's going to give me whatever the value is in B5. I can also do equals, any combination with the dollar signs to give me a locked reference so that I can move it around and it's going to do the same thing. But how do I, if in the next column over here, I've got a 1 and a 2 and a 3, and what I want to make this is I want to have it reference B1, B2, B3. Because what I'll tell you I get into is this new formula that I have here, equals, equals if error, max, this, if, that, else, this, close, I don't know, not close yet, comma, min, and something else, comma, on error, do this, close, close, close. And all I need to do is change this from a B1 to a B2 all the way down the line. Wouldn't it be nice if I just put in a column over here what that reference was? But I just need to figure out how do I write this so that it's referencing B in that number.
Through pain.
Well, because if you can do that, then I can copy this, paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it. If I just copy and paste this down, this, whatever this reference is, may not follow down to the correct value. It actually would if it was going down exactly one row. Some of these things, they're every 3 rows, and there's a reason for that too. And I wish I'd looked it up. The answer is something like this, equals B, what is it? Single, double, and reference, whatever this is, B2, ampersand, colon, single colon, and so what it does is it references outside of that reference, another reference on the page. Don't quote me on that because it's wrong. But it's like that. I use them all the time, and I always have to go look them up because I don't use it quite often enough. And there's at least 3 different variables here: single quotes, double quotes, and the ampersand. And then how you attach it in with this in order to get this as a functional cellular reference.
So it's like a cascade formula?
Yeah, sort of. It's a substitution for what would otherwise just be a number. It's easy if you're going to replace the entire reference with something, but it's hard when you only want to replace half of it. Now, you can also do this with, and you have to use the same kind of format and put row. So what row am I in? So in case, instead of just 1, 2, 3, I just want whatever row I'm in, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. But half the time you're gonna, because you have titles at the top, your rows start down 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And so you need the numbers not to be the row number, but some ordinal index that you've stuck off to the side. It's not unusual if you're working in a database and you need what you would call an ordinal index, whole numbers starting at 1, usually, because the row numbers aren't lined up. Otherwise, you'd have to do row number minus or plus and embed that in here as well. I'm not asking, this won't be on the test, but this is, so the reason I said this, I went to look this up today. And after like 2 minutes, I said, well, screw that. I'm going to go look it up in one of my old formulas in a different worksheet, because it's easy once you have it, but trying to find it, because it said, well, how do you reference inside a reference in Google Sheets? All you get is, well, you're right, equals B5. If you want to use the $sign, that will, lock it to a particular cell 5,000 times, because that's what 99.9% of the people are asking about. And trying to find the thing you're really asking about is so far buried in the trivia. I almost wish, when you're doing a Google search, there was a little star someplace that said level 4. Level 3. Kind of like if you ever call tech support for some technology company and you say, can I please have tier 3, please? And they say, I'm sorry, you'll have to talk to me first. And you can hear them flipping the little 3-ring binder. Is the power light on? Do you have it plugged in? Have you paid your bill? And it's like,
You just share this, but the kind of quotation marks, would that essentially be like the same function as a flag when you're like on the command line in Linux?
yeah,
Or do you,
so
sudo then -I or some
Right.
sort of
So
flag like that?
it's using meta characters
Yeah.
in order to tell Google Sheets, and it's the same in Excel as well. I think they even use the same workaround, and I could go find it. I just don't have it right here. I also use this sometimes if you've got you want to report. So I've got another worksheet that everybody registers all the teams for the track meets. Well, there's 3 track meets. There's one in Brewer, Oakland, and South Portland. If I want to just look at the ones from Oakland, at the top of the page, I have a drop down of the 3 different meets, Oakland, Brewer, and South Portland. And when I drop one down, the rest of the page populates based on that value. So in the query that pulls out all that information, it's looking at that cellular reference at the top of the page. But you have to fool it because you're referencing something on that page in the middle of a query, and queries are only normally looking at other data. So you're looking at a totally different page, but you want to use a reference from your current page in order to change what it is you're pulling the stuff from. And so you end up with the same kind of format here. Question? Yes.
Days and months.
Yep.
I wanted a formula for that, but it didn't take Excel and be able to use it.
Ooh, shall we increase the zoom on this? So your question was to be able to pull out months and dates? Or?
Months and days, because yeah, like they're all different. And being able to like count to know the difference in the days of each month.
Oh, right.
Being able to,
Well, yeah, so there's a couple of different things. What's the outcome you want? The number of days in the month?
yeah, for any given month, and it comes up with it.
Right. Right. So
I was trying it myself for something I was doing. I couldn't figure it out.
right. I mean, really, the only one that's of any question is February. Everybody else is pretty well stocked up on the number of days that they have. You know, if you put April, 2019, and you want to know the number of days, and I move it down. Oops. So one, we can do month, we can do year, equals left, A3, comma, find, and space, comma, A3. So this is just to pull it out. So all I did was I took what if we're looking for April 2019, and I took the left value, and the number of characters I want is the length of it up to the first space. So I found the first space using the find command. So equals left of A3 and the number, and I can actually do find -1, because if I really look at this, it's going to have one extra character, because well, actually maybe not. Yep, it did have the extra character. So I just subtracted 2, and you can always double check. If I take 2 off, you'll see the L disappear. Sorry, I keep doing one thing. So that's clearly that. And what we can do over here is probably the easiest way would be doing a matchup table. So you put in all the dates of the year. There's probably a more elegant way of doing it than this. So we've got January, and then we go all the way down. And then we put in, 31, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31. Okay. So the only question we have really is February, right? Well, 28 or 29, depending on the year. You don't have to know whether or not it's got 28 or 29. There's a couple of ways I would think to try this. One is find if you get an error, somebody find me a month that's got, well, actually this year we didn't have a 29, right? So equals days, and this. So if we do the start date of 2/1/2019, 2/1/2019, and the end date of, go to the following month, 3/1/2019, and it's going to give us 28 days. Could have flipped it the other way. What year had, tell you what, we'll just do it. We'll find the leap year. What happened to my formula? I just put control copy. Oh, I'm sorry, I see. This thing has a function key where I expect the, sorry, which one?
2016.
Okay, so we're going to go in here and edit this, change it to 2016. And we've got 29. So what we did was we measured the length of February by how many days between February 1st and March 1st. And most years there's 28. But if we use dates that are 2016, then there's that many other days. The problem is, let's see what happens if we change this to delete 2/29. So there was no 2/29/2019, and it's going to give us an error.
Is that because it automatically knows?
Yes.
Okay.
So it knows. But the question is, do you want the actual number or do you want an error? So you can, one of the things we could do here is literally, I wouldn't do this for any of the other 11 months because we don't need to know the other 11 months. So let's just say we're looking at 2019. And we're going to put this number up here because we want to be able to change it at a later date. And now we want to know how many days were in 2019 in February. This is going to equal days, and this is where we need an end date. We have to build the end date. So we're going to do concatenate, and we're going to do the beginning, which is 2/1/, then we're going to add to it text of F1. You know why I did that? So we're adding the text value of 2019 onto the end of 2/1/, right?
You can't just put it in there.
So that it goes to check.
Well, but we want to be able to change 2019 to a different year and have it filter down into.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
That way you can click and drag it and populate another year.
wrong number. Oops, what did I miss? Wrong number of arguments. 1, 2.
Oh, it's F2. Oh, no, never mind.
You got the appropriate number of,
Does it have to be commas?
he has enough.
Oh, sorry. Wrong number. It was the days part. We need the beginning and the end date. So we have the beginning date, and we got to put in the end date. So comma. And in this case, we do know what the next day is. It's going to be 3/1/20. Well, no, actually we don't. We're going to have to do the exact same thing, concatenate. Start with 3/1/ and comma text F1. Done. Wrong number of arguments in text. Oh, all right, sorry. So in text, we also need to just tell it 0, which tells it that if we want a whole number. Now, we could flip it, and get a positive number, or we could just go up in here and say minus.
Where'd you put the minus in there?
I put it at the very beginning of the whole formula. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger.
Just cheating.
Okay.
That better? Can you see it a little better? So minus days. Now I could also just have flipped the 2 dates, put March in the front and February in the back. So watch what happens. We go up here and say 2016 now has 29.
Yeah.
And if we go up here and do 2012, got 29. 2013, 28. So that gives you one way to, that was just the first way that popped into my head. There's probably somebody going, geez, Tom, what the hell are you doing? Just do this. And it's a lot simpler. But that was the first way that I came up with in my head, was just looking at the number of days in the month based on 2 dates that you do know, which is the first date of the month, which never changes, and the first date of the following month, which never changes. And that leaves you counting the number of numbers in between.
You show me that formula again? I just want-
Yeah. So, so the days the days function, you just have to give it 2 dates with quotation marks around it. So it's looking at textual based dates, which is why we had to use the concatenate.
Question though. Obviously, you're using Google Sheets.
Yep.
So when you went in to type the formula, you started off with day equals days. It
Right.
gave you a list of how the formula should be written out.
Right.
Does Excel do that? I don't remember.
Yeah.
If it
Here, sure. Hold on. We're gonna do this, right?
Okay. Give me there, that's the question.
Control copy,
I thought it was-
Excel. New one. Control V. And, oops, well, it didn't copy over our formula. Give me a second. I'm gonna go grab the formula.
Yeah, I mean, I understand Excel shows you like all the different forms of days, equals days that you can use, and all the different forms of concatenate and so on and all that.
Right,
But it doesn't actually write out for you that your formula needs to be written in this format, like you just had up there, where it says you need to have your end date first, your beginning date next.
well,
Shows you where you're supposed to put your comma, things like that.
if we do days, and so what you probably need to do is click on end date.
I see, okay.
And then if I click on days itself, it'll open up a help menu
Yeah, that's right.
to tell you how to use the days.
I remember now,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, they both have it. It's just very, it's Hey, they each have their own little world that they live in. All right, what happened over here? Okay, that's right, because it didn't like this, because it came back and said, but there is no. So here's, at the beginning of this where it comes back with an error, you can also do things like if error, start it up. If there's no error, you're going to do that. Otherwise, you're going to write, oops, wrong number of days. So, you know, but then you'd have to go back and manually fix it. What we did over here in F3 was we built in a way to,
Yeah, I get it.
yeah, short circuit. Other questions folks have? All right, I'm going to go back over to my massive. Let me shrink it a little bit. Yes.
I actually have a spreadsheet of my own I'd like to show. It's very simple.
Yeah, do you have a, you want to email it to me? Is it a Excel?
No, it's actually on Google Drive.
Okay, well, share it with me.
Yes, one second.
Pickford@mainrobotics.org works best.
Update your
Oh, well, he's working on that. I was talking to
What was your email again?
Pickford@mainrobotics.org.
No spaces, no anything?
No, and it's Maine as in the state. But I was telling folks earlier, I've been building a computer that we're going to use this summer for teaching kids how to build computers. And we're always looking for inexpensive stuff that's not really trash. It's really easy to find trash. But if you were 12, 14 years old, would you want to build a computer that even your grandmother might think is slow? Probably not. So we were able to find a bunch of i5, I want to say they're 3470s, and which are a decent one. Their CPU benchmark is around 5,500 or 6,500. Not a bad processor. If you had to go out and buy it, you'd be spending probably $150 just for the processor. And it came with a motherboard, but the motherboard was a proprietary Dell Optiplex motherboard. Dell has a tendency to do that. They want it to be easy to assemble. If you've ever bought, how many of you have ever put an ATX-based computer together? You know, all those little wires that say speaker and front side switch and hard drive lights and audio and lots of little separate wires that have to get plugged into your motherboard. Well, Dell bundled all of those into, well, not all of them, a lot of them into a single 20-pin plug. And they're not easy to cross-correlate with anything that you would have in your brand new case. So what I've been doing is going from this, and I got the motherboard and the CPU for like $15. So really good deal on those. And then we bought a power supply and a case for it because we wanted something new. I don't care how much you tell them that the case it came with was fine. If you're 12 and 14 or even 16 years old, you don't want dad's computer case. And these were business computers, came out with, they look like it. So we went in and we got in this case. the cuboid R. Boom. It's a nice case. For $40, it's fully ATX compatible. It's got front and back glowy LED fans, which again, it doesn't impact its performance at all. But think back to when you were 12 or 14 or 16. Whoa, it glows. And, fine. I like this case though. I've never built in a cube before. All of the power supply and the drives are below the motherboard. They've got a platform, it's below it. They've got holes to bring the cables up. So you're not even in the same section. Then you've got this really big open space for your motherboard and any PCI add-ons that you've got. A lot of space. I like it. The whole top has a magnetic removable filter, so you can go wash it out. It's got a pull-out filter underneath the power supply. So if you vent it down, it pulls the air in through the bottom and then shoves it out the back after it's heated it. That's where your cat sits to get, because it knows that that's there for it to stay warm. And yes.
You should be building a full ATX, yeah?
It's a micro ATX, but this will hold a full ATX. I know it says micro.
It scared me.
There's plenty of room. Well,
Can you put a radiator?
yes, you can.
Nice.
So the top, it doesn't, I don't know if it has a picture of it. There, if you looked at the top here, that whole screen comes off, and it's pre-built and pre-drilled for either dual fans or, your radiator or whatever else you want. And on the backside, it's got the rubber grommets for running your water cables out if you want to run water cables out and all that fun stuff. You've got full-length PCI slot capability, so if you got one of those really long graphics cards. So the only things that we haven't finished doing, the power switch was a proprietary power switch. I mean, the switch wasn't, but the plug onto the motherboard was. Luckily, Linus, we all love Linus. What is it, Linus Tech Tips? Is that what it is?
I just dropped text on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, he had gone through for the 7010 and the 9010 optiplexes and figured out all the pinouts. Thank you, Linus. And all you gotta do for this little 5-pin switch connector on the motherboard is pull the cowling off. You got your 5 pins sticking up, unprotected, but they're sticking up. Take your power switch off your standard ATX case, put it on pins number 1 and 2, and boom, your power switch works. Put your power LED from the front panel onto pins 3 and 5, and boom, or 3 and 6, I think. And all of a sudden now you've got your front LED working. So no cutting, no snipping, just pulling the cowling off, sticking them onto the pins in a way that doesn't match what the Dell Optiplex was looking at. Luckily, the USB 3.0 was just a standard 3.0, and that was enough to give both the 3.0 and the 2.0 USB front side, top side in this case, slots, their USB power and the USB out. The only things that aren't currently working, I had to cut and solder to get the hard drive lights working, because that was part of this 20-pin bundle. It's hard to tell on there, but there's a SD and a micro SD slot built in. If I want to use those, I have to cut and solder into a standard, take what's coming off the front side and solder it onto what goes on that 19-pin. And the front side audio jacks also need to be changed from the 9-pin HD audio assembly that the case comes with to 5 of the pins that are coming out of this 90-pin octopus. And I'm just waiting on because I like to do things cleanly. So on the motherboard, you've got, this there's really 19 pins, 20 pin plug that goes in here. And so I plug this in, and I've got a whole bunch of cables coming out. And on the motherboard, on the case of the HD audio, I've got a it's a 9-pin female plug. So I need what I've ordered is an extension, so that it's an audio HD audio extension, male on one end and female on the other. So I'll be able to plug it in here, cut it, and then solder it onto here. That way I haven't cut the wires leading to the case. So if I ever upgrade the motherboard out of this and put a regular ATX motherboard in, I won't be going, what fool cut all the front side, wires. These little extenders, I already bought one set of extenders and they were like $6. And it allowed me to take care of some of it. But what I need is this one, and I also need the front side USB, which is another, this one's got this one blocked out, this one's got, that one blocked out. So once I get those two extenders, I'll cut them, I'll solder them in, and my puppy will be happy. The other thing that it didn't have was that on the motherboard, the fan was a Dell proprietary little fan plug. But the really cool thing is, because people needed to replace fans on Dell Optiplexes, and it's a lot easier to just go buy one, rather than having to go to Dell and buy one from Dell that's proprietary, they just make an adapter. So you buy this little $3, extender, but it plugs into Dell on one side and it plugs into your fan, your standard ATX case fan power supply on the other. Win-win. So all of these connectors that I have to get and doing a little bit of soldering, probably gonna run me $15 per case. But I only spent $15 for the motherboard and the
So you $40 for the case, $15 for that, another $15. So you just built the whole thing for $65.
yeah, and I got monitors for $3.
Oh,
Now they're only 1080.
What are they, DVI out or?
No, they actually have a data port.
Oh, really?
Display
Display
port.
port. Really?
Yep. But the problem is the monitors only handle, was it 1600 by 1080 or whatever the
1680 by 1050.
Yep, that's weird.
No.
16 to 10 resolution.
Which is not real high resolution in today's market, but it's not bad. And it's easily, if I can get those for $3, what we like to do is we really like to focus on the box and then let the students who take them home go whine to their parents, I really want a better monitor. I want a better monitor. Come on, I want a better monitor. Your birthday's coming up. I want a better monitor. You were never like this when you were kids. I know this. Because you all would have respected your parents more than that. I can see Dawn doing this. Oh, come on. I need a better mouse.
It took me 6 years to know what these graphics on board.
It does have HD 2600, I think.
It's on the chip.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you could, if you just wanted to play really simple games and do, without a graphics card, everybody'd be happy. We went through, we found a source for the Sky 500. It's a server display that also outputs in DisplayPort, and it'll go a lot higher. It's passively cool. That's the only thing. But I ran it at full resolution on the monitor that we're building it with, and ran some Steam graphics, 3D kind of games on it for about an hour, and it was running at, what you would expect, about 65 degrees.
C, right?
C, yeah, no.
I was like, if it was at 65 Fahrenheit, that's amazing.
Yeah, especially considering the room was 75, but yes. But we were able to find those for about $40, which if you've been trying to price out, graphics cards right now, good luck even finding a GX 550, an R7 550, or anything that is even 4 or 5 years old, you're still paying
A bill.
and we don't have that kind of money. So by getting this, so you're right, $40 for the case, we're spending about 30 for a new power supply. You could use the power supply that came with the Dell Optiplex. But, it's an ATX standard output, but it's only a 250 watt power supply. Huh? Well, because you have to understand, Dell, when they're selling business computers, people want low energy efficient machines. Because if you put 1,000 computers into your workplace, what's 1,000 times, and they don't run it, but, let's just say, 1,000 times 100 watts versus 1,000 times 300 watts. So I don't know, 100,000 to 300,000, kilowatts per hour kind of thing. Ka-ching, ka-ching. What were they, where was it? Was it in Texas, or there was some place that Google or Yahoo or one of the big server companies, and they were having, might have been Facebook, they were having power brought into their new center. And the state decided that they needed to be billed for the additional cost of increasing the infrastructure for that entire region in order to accommodate that. The bill was $12 million.
You could build a dam,
But, somebody look it up. What's the power consumption of, one of the Google or Yahoo or Amazon server, establishment? It's in the megawatts. They are not small power consumers. So yes, one facility that runs all of these servers is more than probably, half of Bangor uses all day long. So when you add something like that to the infrastructure, everything has to. Did you share that?
Yeah, I did send it to your email.
So, what do you know what you called it?
It's actually, I sent the link to your email.
Oh.
Different models. Looks 9010 right there.
All right. So you got mileage, gallons, price per gallon. You got a good price on the gallons. Total costs, efficiency. So you truncated the simple math there. Efficiency. 19 point, what are you driving?
1999 Subaru Legacy Outback. Ouch.
Yeah, I get that kind of gas mileage on my
truck.
yeah.
It's actually rated at 23 city, 23 highway, 20 cities, so that's about average.
Yep. Cost per mile, 16 cents. So if you went into the courier business and got to charge, IRS tax rates of 54 cents a mile, you'd still, although that's only gas. If anybody ever tells you, oh, you can make money, driving, and you're getting reimbursed at 54 cents a mile, you're not. Because you've got to count in the cost of the vehicle, insurance, wear and tear, maintenance, tires, depreciation, and everything else. And, 100,000 miles is gonna bring you in, $54,000 over the life of that vehicle.
That's sad.
Yes, and that's including everything it costs to run your vehicle for 100,000 miles and the purchase price and the insurance.
You need like another 100,000 to even.
Yeah, which is why, if you rent a U-Haul or something, you're paying at least $1 a mile. Because they actually want to make money on you driving their vehicles. And if you're an over-the-road driver, you're not getting reimbursed, at the mileage rate, you're getting reimbursed at a, I don't know what it is, but it's a higher.
I do have all that years recorded.
Yep, I saw that. Cool.
However, it tends to be a bit more patchy because of the seats.
Yep. Oop. Good year that year, only 11 cents a mile. Well, thank you.
That's cool.
So that's a good, example about applying a need. I remember my first new car, 1984 Nissan pickup truck. It didn't even have a model number. It's just a Nissan pickup truck. They only had one kind. I want a Nissan pickup truck. Thank you very much. And I had a little book that I kept in the glove compartment. Every time I bought gas, I put it down there, and then I'd be driving down the highway doing my mileage calculations in my head because I was bored. And I could do it to 3 decimal places. I don't even want to do it anymore, but hey, it's not like I had a cell phone. I could say, Alexa, could you please tell me what? Blah, 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 divided by blah, blah, blah. But yeah, if we take a look at this, $40, another $30 got me a power supply that was a 550, not modular. That cost you another 10, $15 easy. $40 for a graphics card. I'm getting 500 gig hard drives for $5 to $10. And I'm getting a solid state 1 for 17. So we're going to put the operating system on solid state. We're going to add another 500 just to back it up. So they'll end up with, it's 670 or 620 gigabytes. It's not a huge amount of space, but that's something really easy to upgrade. Throw another hard drive on there. There's spare SATA ports if you need it. Memory we're going to leave on it because the 15-buck motherboard came with 8 gigs of 1600 memory on it.
DDR3.
DDR3. So not tremendous, but so let's see, 15, 55, 85, 95, I'm probably up to 120, 130 with the wires.
That's a decent price.
It is.
That's like scrapyard goods.
Yeah, if you had to go, I'm not saying you couldn't buy this, something similar. You could go buy on eBay a Dell Optiplex 9010, same thing, probably with a hard drive, maybe with the Windows already embedded on it, for I think $200, $250. But it's going to be 5-year-old case, 5-year-old 250-watt power supply, and it's a half height. So if you want to put an expanded card, for a graphics card, you can't put it in the 9010, even though the 9010 was a mid-sized tower according to Dell. It's a half height tower.
So it's a small form.
It is and the only thing small form factor in the whole thing was its height from the motherboard. And you don't have room for a full height graphics card.
The 9010 I have at home is a full size.
Yes, the 9010 came in like 4 different versions.
Yeah,
so you can get 9010 desktop, 9010 slim form factor desktop, 9010 slim form factor tower, and the 9010, regular tower.
They just cut the whole end of the case off, card it, hold it up.
Yeah. Well, We had discussions like that. Well, and unfortunately, there's only like 4 even mediocrely decent graphics cards that will go into a half height. And nothing more current than like a GTX 950 or something like that. You know, yeah. And actually, one of the things we were running into last year when we were looking for these was that people weren't even selling them with the adapters anymore. You know, so the card was a half height, and all you gotta do is take 2 screws off, take the plate off, put a half height plate on it, and it should work, but they weren't coming with the plates. Yes?
The only modern half-height video card that I have seen is the GT 1030. Anything more powerful than that, it's a full height.
Right. And so the 1030 wouldn't be a bad, I mean, you know, that's not a bad thing.
1030 is actually pretty freaking fast for what it is.
No, it doesn't even need PCI Express power from the PSU. Like, it's just like pulling it off the lane.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and the ones that the Sky 500s were putting in, those do. I mean, it takes a 6-pin.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Oh, I mean,
That's pretty cool.
it's designed for some oomph. The only thing is that for whatever reason, it was designed for passive cooling.
Couldn't you just like get like a
Yes,
little
you could.
tiny fan like this?
Well-
Well, just like screw it on.
The thing that bothers me, well,
Rubber band.
Yeah.
yeah, I know,
Yeah.
there was a really funny website that said, but what I add a fan to my passively cooled, you know, graphics card, how do I do that? And the answer was zip ties. And if that doesn't work, more zip ties. And if that doesn't work, more zip ties. You know, that was the.
It
So-
works, I know.
So the problem with this graphics card, you know, here's your graphics card. It's got a big radiator here.
Right on
The
that.
fins go this way, and they actually close at the top.
Oh, it's that. They're really super thin and they interlink.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's your board, here's the air. And if you do this, all you're going to be cooling is the outer edge. So what I've been thinking about, and I haven't gotten to it, is to 3D print a cowling that would go here, that would allow me to maybe do a 40 or 50 millimeter case fan, or, you know, computer fan. Of course, then I'd have to get another adapter, tie it into the fan power supply that would blow in and out. And you'd have to have it blow in and out, because if you suck it, you're going to pull that heat up and melt your plastic. Because I don't care if you do ABS or whatever, you get up above, you know, 60 degrees centigrade, and it's just going to go whoosh. So that's the only thing I can think of doing.
I hate those reference card blower fans though.
Yep.
Terrible.
Well, reference card blower fan style is actually really good in smaller form factor systems where you can actually intake from the side, because you may not have the room to actually have the wire.
Yeah, just trying to keep it under AC. Man,
Yeah.
what?
Well, like I said, I mean, my next experiment is after I fix the wiring, so that I can finally close the case up and say, "Yeah, I'm done." Is I'm going to attach it to. I've got dual 2K monitors on my desk now. This is on my workbench, and so I'm going to take it, attach it to my dual. Although I don't think the display port, so I'm going to have to go. I've got VGA and DisplayPort coming out of the computer. So just VGA and DisplayPort. The motherboard came with a VGA and a DisplayPort output. The graphics card has a single DisplayPort output. So that's what I've got to pick from. So if I want to run dual monitor, I'm probably going to be looking at dual DisplayPort coming off, one off the motherboard and one off the other. And then I'll crank up a couple of games and see if I can't, you know, and I've got I forget which software I've got on there to monitor the temperatures, you know, and it'll tell me what the temperature on the graphics card is. And like I said, I ran it for about an hour and got it up to 65 degrees.
Try like Cinebench or
Um,
Fire Strike.
You mean for cranking it
Yeah,
up
just
in
like,
benchmarks?
let's see if we can set it on fire.
Yes, I'm trying to think of which ones I've used. I mean, I've used Passmark, but that's not a, keep it running, keep it running, keep it running. Passmark, nice benchmarks. 3D graphics is probably 65%, of what's out there, which is not bad. For $130. Well, it's a budget PC that actually, if you had to replace it, you're looking at $400 or $500 minimum. Unless, if you were to build something new. I'm trying to remember, what's the one we use? Starts with an H. And it has a Linux version, so that's why we use it. I want to say Halo, but it's not Halo. I mean, it's anyway. There's another benchmark out there. One of the nice things about that is it will just run in the background without running the benchmarks, but with full video to crank up your video. Passmark doesn't really do that. You just tell it to run the benchmarks. It runs through the benchmarks and it stops. And what was some of the other ones you?
Yeah, like Cinebench or Fire Strike. Just
Don't run.
Oh yeah, thanks, Heaven.
just do not.
Send me an email with those. I'll give it a try. Like I have spare time.
Yes, you have spare time.
No problem. But part of what I'm talking about here, though, is that if you find yourself in a position where you want to build something decent, I mean, you could take out that $40 graphics card and put in whatever graphics card you want with dual, triple, whatever HDMI or outputs, and it'll work fine. Because if you take the graphics off of the processor and put them onto your graphics card, this machine will do anything that you want it to. It has 32 gigabyte capacity in its RAM. 4 slot. Yeah, again, a nice feature. It's not going to beat out a DDR4 machine, but this would be something to experiment with if you had somebody having some sticks of RAM sitting around. Is I've seen it rated for a 16 megahertz max and a 2400 megahertz max. It came with 16. So just like one set of specs said you max out at 16 gigabytes of RAM, and another one said 32 gigabytes of RAM. Well, there's a huge difference between 32 gigabytes of matched 2400 and 16 gigabytes of 16. I mean, I did run the benchmarks with 8 gigabytes of DDR3 1600 and 16 gigabytes of DDR. And it hardly changed the benchmark at all.
It really doesn't.
Because it's pushing everything off the graphics card anyway.
Once you get up to like even 32 gigs,
Yep.
you will be even doing video encoding and crazy things you would think would eat up a whole bunch of RAM, and you'll literally never see it jump above like 10 gigs of RAM.
Where it will help is if you're, a Google browser like me, and you've got 30 tabs of Google open all at once, then 16 gigs would be nice to have. Yeah, I know. It's annoying. I'm going to try to do that with 2 gigabytes. Die a horrible death. What was that?
Just straight up crashes.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember. I built my first computer in '89, and I spent $200 on the biggest hard drive I could afford. That was a 200 megabyte hard drive.
Was it from Quantum?
I forget. I mean,
Quantum Fireball.
when I was young and it was 1989 and I was shopping for computer parts, there was no internet. You went to the bookstore and you bought this month's computer shopper. which was about this big and almost 2 inches thick, of ad after ad after ad of every place that you could imagine buying computer parts from. And it would have articles in there too, which were all linked to ads. You know, what's the fastest hard drive? You know, what's the big? You know what? And but I'll bet you I probably had a whopping 32 megabytes of memory, RAM memory. You have to understand how much the world has changed in the past 20, 30 years. Well, that's 30 years ago now since I built my first computer. And when you're my age, what do you suppose the world's going to look like?
Blade Runner.
Oh, here, let me get my Craig computer going here. Or wait, oh, it's doing it, you know, and
You did that in brokerage.
I know.
Yeah, it was impressive.
It was, but you know, it puts out a little EMP pulse to neutralize, you know, anything nearby. My computer went black too, so, which is unusual. This blacked out and those didn't, but that one did.
Is it the program?
Well, either that or those ones are so far behind, they just hadn't caught up. I'm still betting that within 10 years, we're going to start to see implanted electronics as a regular commodity.
What, where? Really?
Hey, you know, get your phone implanted. Hey, what, you never watched,
Johnny.
no, what's the, Eureka, right? The show Eureka. You haven't watched Eureka, you should. It's for geeks. You all probably classify as geeks. And I remember one time they gave the sheriff, who's the main character, his new phone embedded. Thing would ring whenever, you know, ring, and it's like, whoa, what was that? Phone going off in his head. And I forget, there was something strange. It had a glitch, because if you tried to call somebody whose first name started with an A, it would shock him. Something weird like that. Well, you know, we haven't worked all the bugs out yet. So, but I think that'll be one of the next major things, because, no offense, you can keep making computers faster, but the only purpose at this point, you're already running on some pretty high resolution screens at pretty high frame rates with stuff that you can buy out of the box. And I'm sure you're, you know, within 10 years, you'll be buying 24, 32-inch monitors for your computer that come 4K and 8K easy, with a frame rate 120. But that's faster than
It's
our
already
brains
faster than that.
process.
It's 240, I think, is the max they have right now.
Yeah.
What for, refresh rate?
Yeah, and it's only on monitors up to like 32 inches thick.
Yep. Well, and I just saw Hisense now makes an 8K 120 or 140 inch television, but they've stopped trying to make it a television.
Yeah.
It's a projector, but it's an 8K projector. It's only a 3,000 lumen projector, but the reason being is, think about this. They keep making them bigger and bigger. Can you imagine shipping 120 or 140 inch television across the world and have it arrive there not broken? Yep. And so what, and not to mention, I think, who was it? Samsung came out with an 88 inch 8K last year. The thing weighs 180 pounds, you know, in the box. So you're talking about a fork truck moving the thing around to begin with. So what, you're gonna have it delivered to your house? Good luck with that. You know, bring it through the front door. Oh, it's taller than the front door. Well, can you turn it sideways? Oh, no, because it's longer than it is tall. How do you even get it in your house? It's a commercial model. That the only way you're gonna get it into even a building is if you have double doors that you can turn it sideways like this and, you know, pull it in, but it's so heavy, you're gonna have at least 4 people carrying it. So there's a limit to it, which is why I think Hisense said, let's try this as a projector and have it be a really high quality projector. Because nobody else that I've seen outside of, well, even in theaters, hasn't been doing 8K. I don't know what the current, when you go to the,
Yeah, they got foldable TVs now that they're doing it on.
they're doing what?
I've seen roll-up TVs
Oh, yeah.
that they're doing that with, so that way they're easier to ship.
And, they've always had TV walls where it's monitor, 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 monitor. You can actually do that with these. The broadcast system that these are running, but you'll notice because these are all wired, so they're not going wireless, and you still get lag. And if you were trying to watch a movie on a 3x3, 9 screen, wouldn't it be kind of horrible if Batman throws something at Superman and 2 seconds later Superman falls over? Kind of a discontinuity in the action of the movie, if you know what I mean. So
You really need a very powerful graphics card to do that.
Yeah.
To crush it.
Yeah.
Like, really, it's something crazy video RAM.
Yep. But so these are set up to all copy what's on this computer. But you could just as easily say, no, I want to tile it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and get a 3x3 or 2x2 or whatever you want. Of course, you mount them on the wall next to each other so that you get one big image. But no, I was thinking of, because they've moved almost all movie theaters to digital now, because it's a nightmare to print film and ship it around the world and have them sitting there and splicing the reels together and all that fun stuff that it takes to do that. But I'm not sure what the current state of those projectors are. Obviously, Hisense now can project an 8K resolution onto a smaller screen, but if you can do an 8K for a smaller screen, they can do an 8K for a larger screen. The projectors that you get for a movie theater start at like 25 grand. You're not buying a $1,000 projector to show a movie theater, theater on. I've got a 7,000 lumen projector that we use for daylight showing, but it's not. It needs to be a 15,000 lumen to really play in the big game. It would actually show better in a darkened theater. But it's, and I bought it used for $750. And it was a wicked good deal. And we do use it every year when we go out to big events, and we'll put it out. And I've got a 100-inch screen to go with it, which is, fold up, put it on a frame, stretch it.
Is it a DLP or is it a bulb?
Well, even the DLP has a bulb.
Is those bulbs?
Yep.
You buy
Oh, I know.
like $3,000 projector, and then you're like, oh, I need a new bulb. Well, the new bulb costs half as much as the whole damn projector.
Yes. Well, and when you're looking at replacing those bulbs, it's like, because we have a bunch of 3,000 lumen, which is your standard classroom projector, and you can buy them for about $300, $350, brand new, and replacement bulbs $200. So it's like, okay, I've had them, I've burned through my bulb, do I switch to another one? When we bought this one used, the bigger the machines, it gives you a report of how many hours on each bulb. This thing has 2 bulbs in it. Neither one of them had more than 1,000 hours on it. And they're good for at least 2,000 hours. So I got to put 2,000 more hours on it before I'm probably going to burn through both those bulbs. At which point, and I only use the thing for maybe 10 hours a year. So it'll be an old, the wheels will fall off the carrier I use for it before I use up my hours. Any questions about what's coming up? Chapter 3 for Thursday, and the final on Tuesday. In here, thou must be present. Don't put it off, because obviously grades are due at the end of next week. And there's not many days between Tuesday and the end of the week. If for some reason you have, your car blows up, your dog dies, you have pneumonia, and you can't make it, then we need to figure out how to get it in. But the end of next week's the end of my time here. So I'd be gone. I know, I'm sad. But,
No, you're not.
well, yeah, I am.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't want to go. I wanted to be here. But call a riff.
You said you wouldn't miss us. That's why I was like, you're not gonna miss us.
I'm just talking about you
Oh, thank you.
and dogs.
Oh, come on.
Oh, I would stay if I had the choice. I'm actually trying to see if they want to keep me. Beyond my powers to affect, so. But anyway, what it means is that after probably the end of next week, trying to get caught up, I may have to turn it over to Hal, let Hal figure it out. So we'll see. Although, for all I know, I'll be sitting in there for a week past that, getting stuff closed out. Any questions?
No.
You want to leave a little early?
Hell yeah, I'm hungry.
All right, go away.
All right.
I'll go crack some papers.